Tonight on Cryptidbits, we take it way back to 1936 with a little animal we like to call the thylacine.
Oh.
Ba-ba-da. I'm so glad you could join us tonight. I'm so fascinated by this topic. I'm so glad to have you.
Honored.
Cheers.
So tonight on Cryptidbits, we are going to be discussing one of my favorite topics with you, the thylacine. You are the president and founder of the Thylacine Awareness Group of Australia, correct?
That's correct.
Can you tell me a little bit about the sighting that made you want to start this group?
Yeah, briefly, I recently relocated to Tasmania, bit of a sea change, I guess. And I was taking the dog for a walk at a lake not too far from my home. And my dog took off chasing a wallaby. And then something was stalking me, and I could hear it walking in the bushes and, branches cracking and, the gravel moving under its feet. And every time I stopped, it stopped. It got a little creepy and a little weird, and I wasn't sure if it was a something or a someone. I was yelling out for my dog, and she wouldn't come back. She was off in the scrub somewhere.
Oh, wow.
This thing kept following me, and I got a little bit further up the track, maybe, 200 yards up the track, and I came to a little bit of a low clearing, and I walked into the clearing, and I was looking back at the scrub where these footsteps were coming from, and this thing came out, and it sat behind a clump of grass, and I could see the top of its head and its round ears, and it was sort of hiding behind the clump of grass watching me. And I tried to get closer, and I got so close, maybe 35, 40 feet from it.
Wow.
I'm speaking in imperial because we're metric, but I can do both. So I'll speak in
Okay,
imperial.
good. Thank you. I'd have to put a little conversion chart up every time.
Yeah, for all the metric people.
Yep.
But yeah, and I got close enough, and it thought I've had enough of that, and it took off basically. It was about half an hour, 40 minutes before dark in October 2010. And that was pretty profound. And I met a fella, and he told me a few things, showed me some photos he's got from his trail cameras of what he was adamant with thylacines, showed me some prints, told me what to look for and listen for. And then nothing really happened for another 4 years. And then I had a second sighting literally outside my bedroom window one night. And that's when things changed, and I started getting really interested.
Yeah. It's such an interesting topic. I do have a lot of questions, if you don't mind. I'll try and narrow them down to some important ones.
I've got all the time in the world today, so you caught me at a good time.
I do have yes, go ahead.
Yeah, you're offside of there. Sorry, mate. How do you pronounce your name?
Jason.
Oh, Jason. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
just different kind of spelling to the one.
Yeah. I've been doing that for quite a few years, but yeah.
That's his online personality spelling.
And I certainly it's a great honor to have you on the show. Like I respect your story, and I think it's amazing, and I really enjoy having you on the show tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, cheers, mate. No worries. It's all good. I'm just an average dude with a big mouth and a stubborn disposition, yeah?
That sounds like me. We'll get along great.
Okay, fire away.
So is there a smell associated with a thylacine that's pronounced that you notice when you've been somewhere you think they've been?
No, once I think I've smelt one, because it doesn't necessarily hang around, whereas when you have a dead bit of carrion on the track somewhere or on the side of the road, it's got a smell and it's there. But you get a similar smell allegedly from a thylacine, and this is all anecdotal from the old records from the old bushmen back in the day that were trapping them when they were common. Apparently more so the males than the females. They have a pungent smell. I've had it reported to me from a suspected lair in South Australia on the mainland, actually, as well, in some sandhills.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was any type of scent gland or anything you pick up when you're out there that is just noticeable and pungent enough for you to be like, think they just left here.
You do. Yeah, that's a really good opening question. No one's ever asked me that.
Real? Okay, good.
Outside of my own sighting, that's a good question. Yeah, look, it's predominantly the males, and look, these things are blood feeders. They're carnivores, so they're going to be a bit pungent. They probably roll in their kills as well, like a lot of animals do, scent marking and taking ownership of it and stuff. So smell is known. It is known.
Well, I've raised a girl and 2 boys, and I will tell you the 2 males are much stinkier than the female.
Let's see here. So you mentioned in an article that there have been over 7,000 documented sightings that you know of.
Correct. Yeah, there was an organisation that started in the 1980s in Australia by volunteers in Victoria called the Australian Rare Fauna Research Association by a chap named Peter Chappell. And he had a couple of sightings himself, so he got a little bit of the bug, I suppose, like I got. He started investigating things and collating data, and he collated over 5,000 sightings on the mainland and over 2,000 in Tasmania. But if you go to the Tasmanian government's National Parks and Wildlife Service website or whatever, they've got 180 sightings since extinction, you know. It's like,
I noticed that today. I looked up the article you were talking about in the database you were talking about, and then I went to the one they had. There was another link, and I was like, well, there's only 180 on this one, so what's going on in between those two?
What does that tell you?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's what I was wondering. Do you feel like, I don't know how to, like, do you feel like the government would suppress sightings because then they would have to declare it an endangered zone for them, and they don't want to do that due to not being able to build or make a road there? You think so? They don't have to.
Forestries in Tasmania. Forestries is one of the biggest employers. I think that there's that many leaked stories from national parks and forestries about people encountering these things. It's embarrassing that they can't admit it's there. I'm embarrassed for them.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you got to see over 7,000 people, and you do not. I know you believe. I believe. With these 7,000 sightings, how many of those do you think are truly authentic?
Well, it's a good question again, because Peter Chappell did a paper at a conference called Myths and Monsters in Australia in 2000, I think it was, or 2001. He passed away in 2002, I believe, sadly, of a heart attack. But the paper he delivered at that speech, he said there was after going through all of the 5,000 mainland sightings alone, there was about 1,250 or something that he could not say they were anything but thylacine. The other 1,800 or so, 2,800, could have been ambiguous either way because of distance or what other, factors came into it. Right. But the 1,200 were dead solid, absolute.
Yeah. And that's a huge number for a solid
20% of the sightings.
Yeah, that's huge.
5% of the sightings. That's big. That's really significant for an animal that's been extinct for 2,000 years.
Exactly.
On the mainland,
Right.
Hilarious.
That's what I don't think. I mean, there's no way this is extinct in my eyes. There's no way. There can't be over 7,000 people that, or if you want to go by strong numbers, you said it was 1,200 people that saw a shadow or whatever they want. They can't discount 1,200 people seeing something all over the place.
They do, though.
I know, it's mind-blowing to me.
That's the way science works.
So what do you think? Do you think that there isn't a scientist that wants to take that leap?
No, there's a couple that are teetering on the edge.
You just got to push them over there.
Well, I'm not sure if they've got their parachutes packed properly. So, there's you might want to write this down. There's an online museum called Natural Worlds, the online museum officially for the thylacine. Okay. And some great scientific contribution has gone into there by Stephen Sladeholm, Cameron Campbell, and Barry Brooks as well, I believe. Barry Brooks is based in Tasmania. He's a professor at one of the universities here. They actually state in their opening statement on that website, you can look it up while I'm talking to you.
I can put a link in the descriptions.
Yeah, they believe the thylacine is an endangered species due to the validity of so many sightings. Mm-hmm. And yet only today we've had announced here in Australia that Colossus or Colossal, whatever they're called, are getting in with Melbourne University, and they're going to clone a freak and torture some poor numbat because the thylacine's extinct, and it's such a load of hogwash. It's really quite tragic. It's a travesty for nature and zoology and, the natural world in general.
I just don't know what you would actually, or anybody would have to bring them for them to just fall on the other side of the fence with you guys. They actually would want you to bring a dead body in and throw it out their doorstep for them to be like, there you go.
That's exactly what they want. They demand a dead animal to cut up. That's what they want.
If you happen to see one.
Sorry, go on.
If you did happen to come across one, would you take the chance to shoot it, to bring it in, to make this public?
Nah, no
I
way.
didn't think so. Okay, good.
Nah, I would never, ever harm an animal. I would never do it.
That's what I thought your answer was going to be.
Vegan or anything like that. I eat meat, but it's absolutely not in the animal's best interest. At best, if we knew where one was laying, we might be able to estimate its weight, shoot it with a tranquilizing dart, measure it, weigh it, take photographs, and get a small blood sample from it, and maybe if it's feasible, put a small tracking device on it and let it go. That would be the best possible outcome.
Yeah, I have so much respect for that answer. By the way, I love animals, and I couldn't imagine harming one. Yeah, though I do eat meat as well. So.
Oh yeah,
that's all that aside, mate. All that aside, this is about the conservation and preservation of our apex predator that's been neglected the whole time us white fellas have been here, pretty much.
Right.
For what, 95 years? How long has it been?
The last one died in Hobart Zoo in 1936. And extinction was declared in 1986. So it's an endangered species for 50 years. And if you go to the Hobart Museum, they rub it in your face. It's actually quite sickening. They've got a little plaque on the wall in the thylacine display, and it states on there that they consider it functionally extinct. So, if it's there, it's not really making a difference to the environment because there's not enough of them. So we'll just not worry about that. But
which is crazy.
Last time I checked, functionally extinct means critically endangered.
Exactly. The striping pattern on the thylacines, do you believe that has anything to do with possibly like individual recognition in a family, or would you think it's more of a camouflage pattern?
Probably both, because no two stripe patterns on any two adult animals are the same. They're all slightly different.
Okay.
So it could act as both, but I think their sense of smell would be way more important to them with identification than a visual thing like stripes.
Okay.
Because I'm quite certain these guys have an amazing sense of smell that's better than dogs, probably.
Yeah. And in my mind, I was telling Jason earlier, in my mind, they're bigger than they are, because I've been so fascinated with the topic. To me, they're mentally a bigger animal. And they're not,
they're physically quite large too. The males that I get, reports of, and there's some historical notes on the size of males, they're up to like 55 kilograms and 6 feet long.
Yeah, okay.
Kilograms to pounds, I suppose that's about 100 pounds, isn't it? Something a bit over 110 pounds or something.
Yeah.
So it's a fair, decent sized beast.
Yeah.
The males can get quite large. And the prints that we find are over 4 inches wide.
Oh, wow.
So that's bigger than most dogs.
Yeah.
Massive
big breeds of dogs.
Yeah.
Great Danes don't have feet that big.
No, it's just been so knocked around in my head for so long. They're like, I imagine them as tigers roaming the jungles at this point. That's how great I think they are.
Well, tigers in the jungles, tigers in the desert in Australia, tigers at the beach in Australia, tigers in the rainforest, tigers in the dry woodlands. That there's sightings occur in just about every kind of habitat.
And how do you narrow down where you start your search? Do you go by local, like people telling you, this was in my backyard?
Yeah, well, like when I started, I was in South Australia back on the mainland, right, where I come from. And I got this file of all these sightings from the museum. They just said, yeah, you can have them if you want. We don't do nothing with them. We haven't got the resource to investigate these. People ring up and report things. They write it down, shove it in a filing cabinet. So I got all these sightings, and some of them were like 20 years old. They were so old, they were 7-digit phone numbers. We went to 8-digit phone numbers in Australia in 1996.
And there had been no research done on these?
Hardly nothing at all, nothing. The occasional returned call maybe, and they wrote down a bit more info, and that was it. That's all the museum did. That's all they've got the resources to do, oddly enough.
Yeah, surprisingly enough.
Sadly.
What a shame. There's no investigators there, you know. There'd be investigators there if it was a police matter. They'd have 10 cops on it straight away.
I feel like if it was any other animal, they would have anything on it.
Yeah, that's it. So I just started cold canvassing people and collected a whole heap of information and running with it, basically. And I started the group in South Australia on Facebook, and it was called the Thylacine Awareness Group of South Australia. We had about 300 members. And then in 1996, we released our first ambiguous video of a unusual quadruped, and we blossomed to about 6,000 members in a couple of weeks. And I had millions of trolls and terrible people join the group that were just out to make my life a misery. So I learned really quick on how to screen applicants on Facebook to join your group.
Yeah, that's the thing with people. If they don't want to believe what's going on, don't. That's fine. But don't take it away from somebody that's going out there and doing the footwork and doing the research and working on this. Just let you do you and let them do them. I don't understand people sometimes with this.
It's a bizarre world we live in.
It is, unfortunately. Jay, do you have any? I feel like I'm manipulating and hogging all the questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, I have a few. Like the first thing that I think about is like going out there and doing the things you do. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you were genuinely scared for like your health and well-being?
That's a good question. Look, the first sighting I had where this thing was following me, that gave me the skeevies, The hair on the back of my neck was standing up that day. But when I saw the size of it, I didn't feel as threatened because it wasn't any bigger than my dog, really. It was just a medium-sized dog, like a Kelpie in size. Historically, they're not known to hunt or attack people. They do follow you, though. They're curious. They're very curious, shy animals, and that's well documented as well in the historical records. But there are other things in Australia that would eat you. There's a thing called the Thylacine carnifex or marsupial lion that's also meant to have been extinct for 10,000 years. But thousands of people claim to have had the skeevies scared out of them because of it. It's the animal responsible for the drop bear stories.
Okay.
And if I sleep in my swag on the ground, which is like a canvas single bed tent thing on the ground, I always have my big knife in there with me just in case I have to take something on. Because you're kind of like a hot dog lying there in that thing on the ground. Anything that's hungry could just come up and chomp you out, and there wouldn't be much left of you. We also have a lot of big cat sightings in Australia, alien big cats, and they're very much a real thing as well. That's not a myth. They're definitely there. So I don't want to get eaten.
I don't blame you.
Or are you doing a fundraiser for cameras? I'd like to bring that up so you can tell everybody.
We've got a YouTube channel, obviously, and a website, all of the same name, Thylacine Awareness Group of Australia. We started a new funding campaign to upgrade the thermal image equipment we've got. Mick, one of our members, filmed what we believe to be a thylacine in mid-north South Australia back in May. And there's a video of that on our Fund My Cause campaign. Plus, there's a video all about that, which is a bit more extensive on our YouTube channel. Mick's got about a $3,000 unit, but it's got limited zoom and megapixels. And had he had a better quality unit, he would have got something. You could have just about counted the stripes on its back on the thermal imaging. So we also were going to get a thermal drone, but we've changed our mind on that because there's so many civil aviation regulations controlling thermal drones that we haven't got the time to waste getting the license. It's basically a pilot's license, $4,000. Then we have to form a company. Then we have to register. Then we have to do it. It's just a headache. They don't want people to own thermal drones, you know.
No, it's the same around here
really
with the. Yeah, we have the same issues with drones around here.
No limitations on a handheld unit. So we've got one on order. It should be here in about 3 weeks, and we're looking forward to raising enough money to buy a couple of them, hopefully. Oh, look, we've had. I'll tell you how much evidence we've had. I filmed a striped animal that didn't quite sit on camera in 2015 on a trail cam. It was too big to be a eastern barred bandicoot. That's the only other animal with stripes in Tasmania. And they've got white stripes on a grey body, whereas this thing was clearly a lighter coloured animal with black stripes. I then had DNA evidence from 2017 where I found a really large scat on top of a mountain that had numbat DNA. Numbats are the closest living relative to thylacines, but they only occur in Western Australia on the mainland. They're quite never been in Tasmania as far as the fossil record goes. The scat had decomposed a bit by the time I finally got it tested, but it had an element of numbat DNA in there. It was impossible for that to be there, so it must have been thylacine DNA. It was, and you know, numbats are this tiny little thing like a squirrel, and you know, this turd that came out of this animal was as big as that, you know, so it would have torn a numbat in half if a numbat had done it. You know, I had DNA evidence. Then we've had a couple of more ambiguous videos here and there. But last year I got the crap kicked out of me by the media because the guy from the museum poo-pooed my photo and said they were paddy melons, But I stand by that juvenile animal in those 3 shots as absolutely not being a paddy melon and absolutely physically impossible to be a cat. So it's a 4-legged marsupial and it's small and it's moving away from the camera. But again, the zoologists, nothing but crickets, and the biologists, nothing. So no one really wants to know about it because it's too much out on the fringe in the cryptid world, according to respectable science. And then in March this year, I got a photo again of an adult female, and you can clearly see the backward-facing pouch. You know, a big dark circle in the middle of the photo. It's like, hello, people. Hello. This isn't a wombat. It's too tall and it's got a long tail and I can see stripes there. Is anybody listening? Nah, nothing. So sadly, it probably will take either a bunch of dedicated scientists that take on the status with all the anecdotal evidence or a dead animal for these clowns to take their rubber noses off and pay attention. I actually put it out there to my group a couple of years ago, visualize a dead baby thylacine. We need it. We absolutely need it. A, it's proof of breeding, and B, it's proof of existence.
True.
Exactly. Yeah, I had read an article that there was a theory put forth despite scientific thinking that 500 plus animals are required to sustain a healthy breeding population. They use the example of the Florida panther, which is now down to about a dozen or so, and they're still ticking along. So if somebody manages to find one thylacine, that means there's 50 plus animals still out there. And that came directly from, actually, your side, not mine, Dr. David Pemberton.
Okay, yep.
That was his theory that if you have a picture of one, that means there's 50 more behind there.
Yeah, there has to be.
There has to be.
When you look at the sightings data and how far spread it is all over Australia and Tasmania, you know, suddenly if that does happen, they'll all be knocking on my door and say, "Oh, can we have a look at your sightings information?"
Right,
exactly.
And I'll be like,
"Good for you."
Too little, too late, guys. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah. There's a couple of guys on a radio station here in Tassie, in Hobart, and they made a deal with me that if anybody proves it, they're going to put a billboard on the Brooker Highway going into Hobart saying, Neil Waters, I told you so. I don't even have to prove it. So they're believers.
Would you like to be that one, though? I mean, all the effort and all the time you've put into it, I hope it's you that pushes it and proves it.
I hope that the information we pulled together assisted the person to get to where they got,
Exactly.
Honestly, I've tried to detach my ego from this as much as I possibly can. Obviously, I've got to have an ego just to sit here and talk to you people, But I try not to be a dick about it. And I've always said it'll probably be a taxi driver or a truckie or a tourist or someone random that'll prove it just by chance, because they didn't go to National Parks and Wildlife Service with the dead animal. They actually went straight to YouTube or Channel 7 or something like that.
Right.
Do you think, now I know that the last Thylacine had passed in a zoo, and then there was Hobart's farm. Do you think that anybody might have kept one, I guess not in a menagerie, but somebody had one, not as a pet, but do you think that possibly there were some housed otherwise that weren't?
After 1936?
Yeah. Like people, I'm not saying as a pet, but maybe as like a barn, kept in a barn or hidden away because they knew what was going on. And that could have been how the population revamped itself.
Well, there's a couple of rumors regarding that. One of the most persistent rumors that has absolutely no evidence to support it, but a lot of people believe it anyway. I personally don't believe it. Is that a bunch of naturalists who saw the writing on the wall for the Thylacine grabbed a boat. This has all happened in between 1915 and say 1930, somewhere around there.
Yep.
They grabbed a boat, they grabbed pairs of thylacines and they put them in a boat and they sailed across from Tasmania to Wilson's Promontory in Victoria, which is now a national park and a beautiful area. And they put the thylacines in a dinghy and then they rowed to shore and they took the thylacines out and they let them free to repopulate the mainland and save the species. Now, the reason why I don't believe that happened is A, there's no evidence to say it did, and B, they were worth £100 each at the time as a living animal, and £100 in 1930 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I don't think, not that everyone's motivated by money, because I'm not. I need money to do what I do, but this isn't about money. This is about morals.
Exactly.
And ethics. So there's that. And then there is a story that came to me by a fellow who claimed he was writing a book and he had photographs of a pet thylacine in the 1940s from his grandmother. Never saw the book, never saw the guy, never got to actually speak to him. It was a secondhand bit of information. There are notes in Paddle's book about people keeping thylacines as pets. There's also Aboriginal paintings from Northern Territory in Australia on cave walls of what appears to be a thylacine as a hunting companion next to a traditional man with a spear.
Wow.
So they were definitely kept as a companion animal. There's every possibility that people kept them because they had one and they didn't want it to get hurt.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of evidence for it.
Okay.
That story about the thylacines going to the mainland to Wilson's Promontory, there were naturalists that did take some specimens from Tassie to Wilson's Promontory and let them go. There are notes to say that they took animals there, but there's nothing in the notes about thylacines.
Now, I know that I was speaking to you a couple weeks ago and I did say cryptid, and I know this is not the correct term for it. It's a Lazarus creature, I guess is what this would technically be put under.
I was just being anal.
No, I know. I realized it the second I said it. Do you, since this is technically a cryptid podcast, do you have any thoughts about, I know you're in Australia and it's rife with local legends and stories. Are there any cryptids that you think might be out there that are an actual... Oh, well, what do you go for it? What do you think?
People tell me lots of things. I've seen some weird things myself. There are thousands of sightings on the record for big hairy men, little hairy men. and women, we don't want to discriminate.
No, we can't do that, of course.
there's even stories of marsupial men. So the females have a pouch with a young hairy person in there, yeah?
Wow.
So there's all sorts of weird shit in Australia that's never been proven to exist that people swear black and blue they've seen.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of crossover from independent witnesses that would suggest that they're not telling porcupines.
Wow.
So, you know what I mean? Like there's yowies, there's big cats, there's marsupial lions, there's big hairy men, little hairy men. I've seen weird shit in the sky on more than a dozen occasions in my lifetime, and I've had other people with me on about 3 or 4 of those occasions. We've all seen the weird thing flying around, whatever that was. So,
and you got the bunyip over there too, right?
Yeah, bunyip sightings are a lot less frequent these days. They were very common in the early 1800s because I think some, not all, but some of the bunyip sightings were inland freshwater seals.
Okay, yeah.
And there was also remnant populations of possible megafauna, you know, the last few that weren't quite wiped out before white people got here and started shooting everything that moved sort of thing.
Yeah.
There was also giant snakes reported in the temperate parts of Australia, not just the tropical ones. Giant lizards, who knows? I try not to say, that sounds like rubbish to anything anymore because you're only going to make yourself look stupid. And, you know, people say it about me all the time and I don't want to, you know, project that sort of stuff. So,
well, the only question I have is, what is a porcupine?
A lie. It's colloquial Australian slang. So if it rhymes with it, you know, like you say, we'll go over there and have a Captain Cook and see what's there. Well, Captain Cook is look. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Nice.
So a dog's eye with dead horse is a pie with sauce, you know, like a meat pie. We don't all use it all the time. It was more popular when I was a kid. My dad's generation used all of that stuff.
That's
all
funny.
That legitimised certain things like crikey with Steve Irwin.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
And Paul Hogan, throw a shrimp on the Barbie and all that sort of stuff back in the 80s. So
that was the one thing I told him. He wanted to say that so bad tonight. And I kept saying, do not say shrimp on the Barbie to Neil.
Yeah,
do not say that to Neil. So I love that you
I can't afford shrimp. I'd be just throwing a sausage on there. So that'd be a snag. Cool sausage snags.
Snag.
Yeah, throw a snag on the Barbie.
There you go.
For a snag. Oh.
Well, Neil, thank you.
Man shrimp.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been a blast.
Yeah.
Do you want to end this with anything, or do you want to let my viewers know what your next steps are? Or
look, we have a trail camera sponsorship program on our website. If people want to get on board, people can just be a general member if that's more suiting their financial stuff, and just throw us a basic membership. And you know, we send out a bit of a members pack with a sew-on patch and a bumper sticker and a certificate and stuff. We have a shop on there. We're just a bunch of Davids up against Goliath trying to do the right thing by nature. And there's a few stumbling blocks in the way, but we haven't given up yet. I've been at this for 8 years now. So, and our latest funding campaign for our thermal handhelds and a second drone. So the guys in South Australia have got a drone as well. That's part of the whole funding campaign. Would, if 500 people threw in $5, we'd be able to buy 2 of these handheld units straight away. So it's a cup of coffee that we're asking for. Yeah. We just enjoy what we do. We're passionate. We try and attract like-minded people and keep the trolls out of the group. If people don't believe and they just want to be in there and haggle and hackle, we just boot them out. I can't be bothered dealing with troublemakers anymore. It's for believers and people who've seen it. That's what our Facebook group's about. What I wanted to create was a forum where people felt confident and safe to come forward with their information. I'd collect as much of that as I could, hand it out to other people that were keen if I couldn't get there. This is the other part of your question earlier on. I forgot, sorry. And then whatever information I can't use, I'll just keep, catalogue, and then evidence that I find, I'll share it. And if it helps someone find evidence in their area, then focus on that area, you know, because I was spread out all over South Australia looking for these things. And then as the more I learned, the closer to home it got, because they were right on our doorstep on the foothills of Adelaide. And I soon started to realise that I didn't have to travel very far at all. And the same thing has happened in Tassie. I've tried cameras out on different properties that are hundreds of kilometres away, got a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but nothing really definitive sort of thing. And the closer I come to home, the closer it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I had a film crew come and stay with me over Easter, and I'm in a reasonably remote area, but, there's about 10 other houses where I live, about 2 hours from Launceston. And I had this film crew with me, and I went outside to grab some firewood, and I could hear the yipping in the distance. There was tigers in the distance, and I grabbed the guys and we walked out front and stood on the front veranda, and I said, shh, just listen. And they were peeking, like they're there. And I said, yeah, that's them. That ain't sugar gliders. They sound like a squeaky toy. That's tigers, That's absolutely tigers. I've heard that noise now a couple of times at home, and I've heard it in about 4 other locations in Tassie. So, their numbers are building up, absolutely, without a doubt. In the last few years, we've been quite fortunate in getting audios donated to us to use. And we've got several examples of the yipping noise they make when they hunt. Yeah. And we've also got a couple of examples of the dry cough bark. They also do like a double breath thing when they bark. It's really quite peculiar. And on that page that I sent you, the evidence thus far, if you scroll down to the very bottom, I've got to revamp the website, but if you scroll right down to the bottom of that page, there are some examples there on YouTube videos from our YouTube channel of what we believe to be thylacines. We had some awesome audio given to us a few months ago by a chap named Ben out here in northeast Tassie, and that was absolutely a family communicating while they were hunting, but it was slightly different than the yipping noise again. So all up, we've got about, I think, 4 or 5 different samples of what we believe thylas sound like on our YouTube. So we've done quite well there. Yeah. Some of that fits in with historical info, and then some of it is a bit new and unknown, I suppose. Well, I think the future's pretty good because the information keeps coming in. It absolutely is evident that there are quite a few populations of tigers in South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales. We get a bit of information, but it's very mountainous, so it's hard work, and same with Queensland in the areas. Western Australia, Tassie, they're all got them. The only place where we don't get a lot of sightings is Northern Territory, but there's not a lot of people in Northern Territory. But we still get them from there. And the Indigenous folks up there are quite happy to say that they're still a living part of their culture, as are the people in South Australia. So, and that's something that the politically correct people at the museums like to acknowledge, Indigenous knowledge, but they don't want to acknowledge that the old thyla might be part of that. But anyway, we'll get there. I feel confident that sooner or later I'm going to get a photo of a face instead of an ass, and everything will change.